Have you ever noticed something about TriMet? We operate exactly 0 overnight buses. There is 0 overnight transit service in the Portland area. That's right, not one bus, not one train that runs overnight. Is that normal? Well, pick any major city across the U.S. and check their transit schedules. Yeah, this is definitely not normal. There should be some overnight service somewhere. In fact, here are some major cities across the U.S., actually North America, that do have overnight bus service. Seattle. Seattle's got overnight service on their Rapid Ride lines A, C, D, and E. Trolley bus lines 7, 36, kinda, and 49, as well as some other city bus routes. San Francisco has the Muni Metro L and N, provided by a bus overnight, as well as trolley bus lines 5, 14, and probably more. Philadelphia, the Broad Street subway as well as the Market Frankfurt subway are both provided by a bus overnight. The Lucy, Green, and Gold loops, I assume that's some sort of BRT system, runs overnight. The G and R bus lines, trolley lines, that's right, actual streetcars, lines 10, 13, 15, and 36, as well as likely several bus lines as well. Chicago, the Blue and Red Line subway, as well as more than 15 bus lines run 24 hours a day. New York, most subway lines, some select bus service lines, and most Long Island Railroad lines run overnight. Long Island Railroad is overnight-ish. Toronto, 4 streetcar lines, the 501, 504, 506, and 510. There's also a whole network, a night bus network. And in Toronto specifically, all of these night buses and streetcars are all renumbered into the 300s. So 301, 304, 306, 310. Now let's bring it back to Portland. Before COVID, TriMet actually did run 3 overnight bus lines. Before I get to that, no, the 291 doesn't count. The 291 Orange Night Bus is not an overnight bus. It just fills in because Orange Line trains stop going to Milwaukee unusually early. But there are trains in Milwaukee that do come back during that time. So to fill in the absence of trips going to Milwaukee, TriMet introduced the 291 the day the Max Orange Line started. And it provides 1, sometimes 2, overnight buses. And they're only during pretty much normal schedule hours, close to around midnight. It doesn't run overnight, so it's not considered on this list. But we did have the 20 Burnside Stark and the 57 TV Highway Forest Grove. These lines did run 24 hours a day. TriMet introduced it not long before COVID and had to cut back on it because nobody was riding the overnight trips. Both of these lines kinda sorta parallel the Max Blue line, so after the Max stopped running for the night, these buses could sorta get you in the general area of where you might need to go overnight. And it provided service, in a weird sort of way, between Hillsborough and Gresham. We also had a third bus line, the 272 PDX night bus. And this filled in for after the Max Red Line stopped running to the airport. You could catch this at 82nd Avenue, and it just ran up 82nd Avenue and went all the way to the Portland Airport overnight. All of these overnight services ran hourly, and this 272 bus was overnight only. These services have pretty much been canceled, with the 20 and 57 running only most of the day with no service really at all at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock a.m. Okay, so if you wanted to reintroduce, again, night service back to the Portland area, what routes should have the night services? Well, there are two ways you could attack it. You could look at the top 5 or top 10 busiest bus routes in the TriMet system and gradually start adding hourly bus service to those lines. Or you could say, where do people want to go the most during the night? What highways or roads do people travel on the most at night? What graveyard jobs might people be working and might have to take the bus back home? And with either of these two methods of attacking night buses, it's also worth considering that on the Friday night schedule, you might want to add a couple of extra trips so that people who went out drinking can get home safely, and same thing with Saturday night schedule. Personally, I would do the same lines 20 and 57, bring those back to 24-hour service. And I also definitely think FX service should be 24 hours a day. After all, isn't this supposed to be enhanced bus service? And if you introduce overnight service and it turns out that they actually do pretty well, then you could increase some of those busiest ones to possibly every 45 minutes overnight instead of every 60 minutes. And I could definitely see FX candidates doing that because FX routes are some of TriMet's busiest. Other busy lines include the line 9 on Powell Boulevard, the 12 on Barbara Sandy Boulevard, the 54 maybe on Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, and the 72 on Killingsworth and 82nd, at least on 82nd. Also, an additional note with the line 20, to me it doesn't really make sense to be serving the Mount Hood Community College at 3 o'clock in the morning, so you might have to modify the 20, and you could introduce an overnight only version called the 220 Burnside Night Bus that doesn't serve Mount Hood Community College and might end up serving MAX stations on Burnside instead of going on Stark during that portion, but that's all up for debate. Well, the next most logical thing to upgrade in TriMet system to 24 hours would be the MAX. The Blue Line is by far TriMet's busiest route. The busiest mode of travel in TriMet, the busiest line, is the MAX Blue Line. And right now, it has that many overnight trains. If you had some extra Blue Line trains, doesn't have to do the whole line, but if you have them go from El Monica, or maybe Willow Creek if it makes it easier to turn the trains around, all the way to Gateway, or even as far east as Ruby Junction, I think that would be really helpful for people who are trying to get back home. It just allows the possibility of overnight travel. And then during the Friday night schedule would be quite a bit different, and trains, instead of being hourly, would be every 45 minutes. Same thing on Saturday night schedule. I would also add Red Line trains, but they would only go from the Gateway Transit Center to Portland Airport, and it would run hourly. So this could just be one train shuttling back and forth between Gateway Transit Center and the airport, just that short little bit every hour. And I think even if it may not get used too much, there are people coming to and from the airport at 3 o'clock in the morning who may have traveled from London or something. The old downtown mall shuttle could be brought back as well, a single car train that just shuttles up and down 5th and 6th Avenues in downtown Portland. This train would be useful for folks in downtown, but I think it would be more useful if this train also crossed the Steel Bridge and served the Rose Quarter area, either serving the interstate Rose Quarter and turning back using the Broadway siding, or continuing through the Lloyd District and ending at Northeast 7th Avenue and using the Doubletree siding track. It's not really easy to turn trains at Rose Quarter when you're coming in from that direction. I suppose this could be an overnight bus if that makes it easier for you to be able to turn it around at Rose Quarter. And this bus would serve the MAX platforms directly, just like the current 291 does. So it would just serve the downtown mall stops, head over the Steel Bridge, and end at Rose Quarter Transit Center. And it would run every hour or whatever. You could even have these as a timed transfer. Let's say you took that downtown mall shuttle to the Rose Quarter, and then 5 to 10 minutes later, a blue line shows up that'll get you all the way out to Gateway. And then once you get to Gateway, another 5-10 minutes later, a red line train is leaving to the airport. You could have them timed in that way. Now for something you may not have considered. Overnight streetcars. To my knowledge, there are no modern streetcar systems in the US which currently have overnight streetcars. So Portland could yet again be pioneering with the decision to introduce such a thing. And it absolutely does not have to be the whole streetcar network. I would definitely say the route should include 10th and 11th Avenues in downtown and extending through the PSU area possibly. And it could go as far as Tillicum Crossing and to the OMSI station at the furthest. It really does not need to be the whole thing. I guess at a bare minimum you could have it shuttling up and down 10th and 11th Avenues, although I would suggest doing a little bit longer of a line than that. So those are the things that have come out of my head for this sort of thing. I definitely think Portland could use some actual overnight service, even if it might be hard to find people to work those shifts. You know that those sort of people are out there. If places like Chicago, which are not really known for the best crime rate right now, if Chicago has 15 plus bus lines running overnight, as well as 2 subway lines running overnight, I think we can do the same in Portland. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one.